this week's video commentary, I'm not going to even try to re-preach the sermon from last week, but for those that missed it, to kind of set up this conversation, we're walking through Exodus. We looked this past week, Exodus 18, and it's Jethro brings his family to reunite with Moses. Moses sits down, tells the story to Jethro of all that God has done, and then seemingly Jethro responds then with an awareness that, oh, Yahweh is God, and he builds an altar, he worships, and there's almost this Old Testament like death to life moment, okay, in Jethro. And then the next day, Jethro speaks to Moses and imparts wisdom from his leadership, and that's the moment where he's like, "Hey, man, why are you running around like crazy? You got all these people that you should get to help you." And so, in this one chapter, both Jethro and Moses have this moment where they learn and their life is changed. And we took that on Sunday to kind of look at this circle diagram and to identify these kairos moments.
Love the circle.
Absolutely. It's a way that we can process. And so as I reflect on that and I kind of think about what you've been going through, and interesting to see throughout this conversation, okay, how has that been a moment for you? And then I even have had, moments over the past several weeks and months where this same experience that you've walked through has been moments for me and for our staff, even for our church, I'm sure. And so I just kind of want to talk through that and just see where we go. So I don't know, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what has God been teaching you, and what has He been saying to you through the past couple months through this experience?
Yeah, it's been a lot, and it's been good. It was cool in your sermon on Sunday. One of the points you made that the text was telling us was that, the things that God speaks to us, the things that we learn, are sometimes for our reminder, and sometimes for the people in our lives to hear from us, to encourage or help. And so this season for me has been a lot of the former, has been reminders and proofs of God's goodness. Like I really am good. I really am gracious. I really am a provider. Whether that be through peace, inner peace, and confidence, just to get through the doldrum of a hospital stay and treatment and things. But more even than that, through the people around me, whether that be like incredible doctors and nurses that were not only medically helpful and really good, but also concerned about me, the person, in godly Christian ways, having nurses pray with me, having doctors come in and pray with me. I had a doctor, I'd already read it, but he brought in a Tim Keller book one day.
Cool.
That was just like, hey, this has helped some people, and our church is reading this right now. And I was like, hey, that's great. I've read that book already. I've got it, but I really appreciate, those kinds of things. And then on top of that, even ancillary people in that world. I had an ambulance driver once taking me from one hospital to another hospital who was a bivocational pastor, and we just spent this hour and a half, I think how long it was, ambulance ride, and he just prayed with me and walked through what was going on and was just really encouraging. People I don't know, and then maybe even more people I do know, whether it be our staff who have been amazing, and people in our church, and people in just my circle who have been kind and encouraging, and even in those moments of like just heaviness and weightiness through this process, like getting cards from people in the church that are just, hey, we're praying for you, and the Lord is a provider and a healer, and we believe that, and encouraging letters and things from people that just really, affected me, both like to humble me that there are people that care enough to do that, and to encourage that the Lord is using that to remind me of his goodness, because that goodness comes from him.
Absolutely.
And he's using those people to do that. And it's been a constant reminder over and over and over and over again, like, no, I really am who I say I am. I really am good. I really am gracious, and I'm not gonna leave or forsake, and I'm gonna provide. And just learning once again not to be shocked when he does that. We've said that a million times, or I've said that to you a million times, I'm sure, that it sometimes seems like jest, but I really mean it. Like, I'm just not gonna be surprised by God anymore. Like,
right.
He really is all powerful. So, and he really is in all control. So, like, I don't really have to worry about it. It's gonna be good.
Right. I think about you have said that a lot. Like, of course God's going to do that,
yeah.
right? And I think one of the things that God's been revealing to me as I've been studying through Exodus for sermon prep, especially when we turn to Exodus 19, which we'll get into a couple weeks, but those are moments where God is like demonstrating his authority and his holiness, and when we compare what we normally think about with as his image bearers, but as humans, like, our character's developing, or it's constantly changing, or it's flexible, but God is inflexible in his character. Like, his nature is immutable. He doesn't change. So of course he would be provider, because that's who he is, right? So that's beautiful. But all right, I got to ask though, because I hear what you're saying, where you've been reminded of who God is and you've been able to see that, but surely there have been moments along the way where, fear, anxiety, worry, like, what have those moments been like for you?
Yeah, I can truly say I've been lucky in that there haven't been many of those, honestly, and those moments have been fleeting, because of the goodness of God and the reminder and the kindness of his people. But there were, for sure, there were moments at the very beginning when we didn't know what was wrong, and there were a couple other possible diagnoses that were far worse than what it ended up being.
I remember those text messages.
That were really bad. And there were certainly, nights sleeping on that were not great. But those were short times,
right.
Again, because God is gracious, and the doctors figured out that actually it wasn't those worst things. It was this bad, but ultimately not the worst thing it could have been. And then, when you spend as much time in the hospital as I did, my parents have been great, and my friends have been great, and the staff was great that they came when they could, and it was often. I wasn't alone much, but there were definitely stretches in the middle of some weeks where it'd be like 2 or 3 days where I just didn't see anybody, and I wasn't necessarily in treatment, so I wasn't getting a lot of visits even from nurses or doctors. And so I would wake up in the morning, and then I would go to bed at night, and it would just be in bed all day because I couldn't get up at the time, and that was kind of it. And there were a few of those times where it's just, you're getting cabin fever and you're getting stir crazy, and you're just going, why can't this be over? Like,
right.
What is the point of me being here? And ultimately, as with everything in God's plan, like, it was for my good that I was there, even on the days when I didn't feel like being there anymore.
Sure.
Which was pretty much every day I was there. But again, those moments were fleeting, because I would receive encouragement from a doctor or a nurse or an ambulance driver, or someone from our church would call or send a letter, or someone would visit. And it would be another reminder again of God's goodness, saying, like, you're not alone. I'm working through this. I'm here the whole time, and you don't have to feel like you're siloed, even when you're in this room. And so, sure, there were moments of that, but getting through those on this end of it, at least, feels so light and momentary.
Sure. And I'm sure there's, if I can interrupt, I'm sure there's a layer of that, of, personalities certainly may impact response, but in all likelihood, there are people that are watching this because they're wanting to hear an update from Michael, or they're intrigued by your story. And they may not be in the middle of cancer treatment, but they may certainly have those moments or days of isolation, fear, whatever it may be. So from what you've learned, kind of what encouragement or counsel would you give for them so that hopefully that can be a fleeting experience?
Yeah. I think it's two things, and maybe not in this order, but just in the order that came into my head, that it really stresses for me, and the encouragement for people like that, the importance of community, the importance of intentional relationships, something we talk about a lot around here, that there are people in my life, whether it be just non-specific church member or someone in my life group or inner circle or whatever, who knew enough about what was going on with me to reach out. And they actually did that, and they were encouraging. And that's not just because I was there and in that situation, but because we as a church have that culture of intentional relationships. And in my own life, I'm lucky enough and have worked hard at having relationships that have built to that point.
Sure.
And so in those moments, you need people in your life who can step in and say the thing you need to hear. Because sometimes that's just an encouraging word. And sometimes that's, some of that misery sometimes can be self-imposed.
Sure.
And you kind of need somebody to go, hey man,
Right.
suck it up. Let's deal with this. And having the people in your life who are willing and you've given permission to do that with you and to go there with you is crucial. Because when those moments come, you don't know what to do sometimes, and you need somebody else on the outside. And then the other thing I would say is that, there is a difference between knowing who God is, and then I think there's probably a step further than that is believing that it's true.
Absolutely.
And then I think there's even a step beyond that, maybe, that is actually believing that it's true. Because I've always believed that God was good, or not always, but since he saved me, I've believed that God was good. But there have been moments in the past couple of years where it's, oh no, I thought I believed that God was good. I really believe he's good now. It's more. It's non-ignorable now. And having grounded yourself in the goodness of God, believing in God's grace, and really pushing yourself into his mercy as much as possible in the day-to-day things, helps with the confidence that when those dark moments come, you go, he hasn't ever forsaken me before. why in the world do I think he's going to do that now? Where the person that lies to you the most is you,
Sure.
and like, it's good to remind yourself, like, no, I'm sick now, but I had 30 years of not sick.
Absolutely.
He was good then.
Right.
And like we said, he's immutable, so there's no shadow of turning. Like, he's going to be good now. Mm-hmm. So having that reminder just from personal experience or whatever, biblical study and prayer, like those two things together, the community and that constant grounding myself in the goodness of God, or yourself in the goodness of God, I think are the two things that I would focus on the most for someone in that scenario.
Makes perfect sense. As you were walking through that, the thought that came to my mind is, you described, okay, I know it and I believe it, but then I actually believe it. And
yeah.
In my mind, the intersection between believing and actually believing is the spirit of James 2 and 3.
Yes.
Like, okay, well, our faith without works is dead, so I'm actually going to act on this?
That's right.
Okay, Lord, I really need you to heal me right now, and I really need you to provide these medical bills and all those things. Like, I actually believe it.
You can tell me you believe all day long. Now, show me.
That's right. Exactly. That's beautiful. So many things I could say there, but in the interest of time, let's go back to where we started with the circle.
Yeah.
And I'll just unpack this and be a little transparent with you, and then give you the opportunity to respond. So that as we wrote out this circle diagram, the ultimate objective is to grow in the knowledge and understanding of the Lord. And so half of it is internal, and I'm really trying to answer the question, okay, God, what are you saying right now? And then when you flip over the other half of that circle that requires to be external is, okay, so what am I going to do about what you have said? And as I process that, and I am in no way comparing that what I have walked through while you've been sick is anywhere remotely compared to what you have walked through. But even your journey has exposed things in me. Like, as I've tried to be a brother to you, lead our staff, figure out how are we navigating one, you're taking care of what's most important right now. And it has really revealed in me some fear and anxiety. It has revealed in me really a lot of symptoms of like trauma, or even some natural things of what we would expect to see in grief. And you're obviously not dead, so it's not that type of grief. But
I don't think so.
But grief of, from a teammate, like, wow, your office is empty, or you're not in the meeting, or your voice is not here in this moment. And so there's this kind of grief that I have felt, and even the pastors and our staff have felt. And so, that's kind of some of what I've been observing that the Lord is exposing. Now, what am I going to do about that has been giving myself permission to say that, and permission to talk about that. And even, like, I've invited Brother Don, our pastor emeritus, with a crazy amount of experience in counseling.
Yep.
Okay, will you sit with me and sit with our staff and help us emotionally process these feelings so that we can grow and move forward? And so that's kind of how this circle has impacted in me as it connects with you. But what about you? If you were to divide that, what has the Lord been saying, and then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I think the right half of the circle, the internal, like I said, has been the reminder of God's goodness, like in actual tangible ways. That the grace of God and the mercy of God is not just an intellectual thing. Like, it is physical, tangible, real, like actionable things. And so the other half of that is I need to be more willing and able and active in being the encouragement that I received, in passing that forward, as it were. in other people's lives who may be going through something similar to what I'm going through, or maybe are just having, like we talked about, just this is just a bad day, and like God's goodness may be a donut, you know,
Sure.
or something from one of those nutrition places that are all over the place now, those teas.
Yeah.
And I need to be more active in that, because how dare I not be? Like, with all that God has encouraged me and strengthened me and pursued me and propped me up in this season, like, how dare I not go back
Yeah.
and be that for other people with the power and ability that God has given me to do that with.
Sure.
So that's the...
All right. I love that. Let's go a layer deeper then. We didn't really have time to unpack this part on
the
Sunday.
next tick on the
That's right. So if we were really going to live out the circle as a tool, there comes a point then in this external part that you've got to invite community in. So if you're saying that the action is you to be that in others, what's one specific action step you're going to take in the next 2 or 3 days, or let's say a week, to do that, and then how can I hold you accountable to it?
I've thought about this a little bit. I've got about 4 people in mind, a few of which are going through like a medical thing, a few of which are just going through kind of a rough family situation that are in kind of my world that I need to be really engaged with in the next week, to be as actively showing God's goodness as I can be in their life. Whether that's, for a couple of them, that's probably like just messages.
Sure.
And for a couple of them, that's probably something more tangible than that. But there are, I won't mention them because it's not appropriate, but those people, I've got actual things I can do
Sure.
to be that response that I've felt.
So how can I hold you accountable to that?
Very forcibly ask me if I've done anything in about 4 days.
Got it. I'll do that. Perfect. All right.
Same question.
Okay. I've given the action step that I'm working toward as it relates to inviting Brother Don. I just follow up and make sure I do that.
Yeah.
That schedules change, and that there's actually follow through, that the meeting actually happens.
Is that meeting scheduled already?
I think it's the 22nd.
Okay.
So you can just check with me and make sure that happens. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been helpful. I would say I hope it's encouraging to people in light of what we studied last week. And as always, I mean, if people can check out the website, follow up. I would say while we're here, I'm sure there are many people that would love just kind of an update.
Sure.
How's Michael doing? So if you were to just to the masses say, hey, here's the update. What would you like to share?
Right now, Michael's doing really well.
Okay.
I'm kind of in a break from treatment right now, which is why I'm kind of up and about and not feeling awful in a bed somewhere. I've been through a couple rounds of chemo. They were very successful. I've had the surgery to get rid of the tumor that we needed to get rid of. That's done. It's gone. And right now we're kind of waiting to do some imaging and some scans and things and some more blood work and lab work to figure out what the final stages of treatment look like. There's some numbers that would be really complicated to try to explain, but basically some numbers they look for in blood work that tell them how active and present the cancer is in my body. And that number has decreased by a lot.
Praise God.
It's very close to healthy levels, like non-sick levels right now. And so that's a really good sign. So I feel a lot better. I've been telling everybody, I feel healthier than I felt in years.
Sure.
Just because that stuff's probably been in me for a lot longer than I was even feeling bad,
Right.
So, lots of doctor's appointments coming up to figure all that stuff out. Lots of sitting in metal tubes while they take pictures of the inside of my body and all that stuff. That's really fun. And then we'll figure out, is it another round of chemo? Is it 2 or 3 more rounds of chemo? Whatever that is. So we'll get through it. It'll be great. And hopefully we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning.
And we absolutely pray that. We'll continue to pray that. And, we look forward to the day whenever that backstop is, that, you're healed, cancer-free, recovered to the point you can get back to work.
I'm excited. I can't wait.
Here's a question that just hit me.
Okay.
I'm going to just throw this into you unexpectedly. Let's acknowledge what we're doing. Like, you were at a point in your life videoing something that God's teaching you that, based upon the way the interweb works, will be there forever. So, God willing, this cancer is not going to kill you.
Right.
But something will one day.
Right.
And this video will still be out there.
Yeah.
So, for that person who finds this in the future, this experience in your life, you have had to face the reality of life and death in a way that I've not yet had to do. So, what's your hope that God uses this and uses your story? If somebody reflects back.
Oh, there's a lot of things I'd want to say. How do I distill and also say it in a way that people who don't know me would not? I'll say a few things so that if you do know me and this makes sense, it'll make sense. And if you don't, whatever. Because part of what I would want it to say is death is actually not that scary.
Right.
The prospect of dying, I think we are, I understand the fear behind dying. And I understand the trepidation behind dying. I get it. But for those who are in Christ, like, death is not a big deal.
That's what Paul said.
It's just right. If I'm here, let's work. If I'm not, even better.
Right.
Right. That's Michael's translation of that. Like, it's just not a big deal. And like, yeah, there's sadness and you're gonna miss people and stuff, but like, there's something so much better on the other side of that. And I am very lucky in that this journey for me, except for like the first couple of days, there wasn't, at least, and this may be ignorance on my part for not actually understanding what was wrong with me, but death was never like on the table. Like, it was, you're just going to be sick.
Right.
Or we're going to treat you. And I guess it could have killed me without treatment, but even in that, just coming face to face with an illness that can kill you, and just going, and again, God's goodness and grace to let me feel this way. Like, this is not, there's better things ahead, no matter what happens.
Right.
Like, either we live and this is a testimony of God's goodness and healing me, or we die and I'm with him.
Sure.
And the worldly troubles are, like we said earlier, light and momentary afflictions.
That's right.
Right, not a big deal. That's one thing. The other thing would be kind of what I said earlier. Do not allow yourself to live in such a way that when those dark moments come, there's no one there for you. It is so easy, especially as men. It's really easy to fall into a grind and a rhythm of life where you have friends, I'll do that higher in case it's not on camera. Friends, people that you tolerate at the water cooler or
Right.
at the coffee, whatever thing y'all do with coffee, that when you're actually sick, they never either don't know,
Right.
or they don't care, really. And that's sad.
Absolutely.
And it's dangerous because you'll feel way worse when the time comes that you need somebody and you
Right.
don't have them. And you need, most importantly, the church in your life, like, to rally around you and lift you up. It's what the church is supposed to do.
That's right.
And you need the people individually in your life who are in the hospital room with you and who are facing the hardship with you and can answer the phone when you can't. Who can cook the meal when you can't.
Yeah.
You need those people. And the difference in life between when you have those people or when you don't have those people to when you do have those people is the difference between life and death a lot of the time.
That's good.
Like, the seasons where I'm not as connected to a small group as I need to be feel like death. And there is so much life-giving, like, not weird, not forced, not superficial, just goodness when I am connected to that kind of group. That it's just a different world that I live in when that happens. And so would say, if you want to know the difference between going through a cancer treatment and feeling awful about it and going through a cancer treatment and, like, kind of coming out the other side going, man, that was crazy, but what God's in control and everything's going to be great. It's that piece.
That makes
It's
sense.
the people around that are walking through that journey with you as much as they can,
Sure.
because you got to give people grace. Like, I don't expect anybody to lay down everything just because I'm sick, but people want to help if
Right.
you allow them to, and that changes the world.
That's good. That's beautiful. And I think to maybe wrap this up, I think what you have just shared in that statement really speaks back to what you articulated in the circle. And I can imagine somebody hearing this and say, yeah, that sounds great, but I got nobody. I think the fastest path to have that is to be that. And so, like, if somebody finds themselves like, I don't have those types of relationships, well, then be intentional and go serve and love and provide and, bring that meal to someone in need, or, demonstrate that acts of kindness and sacrificial love. And then in doing, you may discover that you start receiving.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's just a thought. Well, man, I appreciate the time. Love you. Appreciate you.
Love you.
Excited to see how the Lord's doing this.
Yeah.
So, and for anybody that's watching this, again, if this is brought up some thoughts or some questions, man, reach out. We'd love to help navigate.
Absolutely.